sharing with you my thoughts on kind of current events. And I want to pray here in a moment, but I welcome you to share. I just ask you keep your comments concise. And before I pray, I want to read this verse with you. Because when you talk about current events, it really overlaps into politics. And whenever that happens, going in a little bit into politics, things can, in settings can kind of get rough quick, okay? So notice this verse. Eric, could you read this one nice and loud for us? Would you mind?
But when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council, Men and brethren, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee. Concerning the hope and resurrection of the dead, I am being judged. And when he had said this, a dissension arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided.
Okay, so you get my point. Some people in here might lean towards Republicans. Some might lean towards Democrats. So if you have a comment, I'm asking you to be like kind of, what's the word? Tactful in your comments, recognizing that we're trying to keep a separation of church and state, but at the same time realizing that they do overlap sometimes, because we're going to talk a little bit about that. So let me pray with you, and then we'll get started. Our Father in heaven, I just want to ask that your Holy Spirit will be with us. It's so good to see my brothers and sisters here, and what great memories it brings back. And Lord, as I see them, and I know that we're going to all go our separate ways here, not too long in the future, but it just reminds me of heaven and when we can get together for eternity. So I pray that you'll bless our time together as we kind of look at these prophetic updates. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, Cassidy, you can pass. You mind reading that one for us? Okay, I want you to notice that last part. The whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one. How would you put that in your own words? The whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one. What does the devil know how to do very well? Deceive. He knows how to move the masses in a certain direction. He is an expert at it. His number one weapon is the media, right? So he knows how to move young people, adults, the venues and the avenues to get to their minds, to get people shifted in thinking in one direction. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about an issue that has really drastically changed in my lifetime, okay? And then I'm going to talk about current events, things that are happening where I see that just how things began back in the 1990s, I see things beginning again, and hopefully you'll understand more what I'm talking about, okay? So I want to talk about from 1993 to today on an issue that we all are very well of, and that is the issue of homosexuality. Now, when I was 1993, I was a sophomore in high school, a movie came out that was called Philadelphia, and I watched the movie, and the movie has got two very famous actors, Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks in it, and Tom Hanks plays a homosexual who his rights, he really gets shafted. The people he works for very strongly make fun of homosexuals, etc. And the movie really paints people in a bad light in their attitude towards homosexuals. Now, in saying that, I have to be very clear that we should treat homosexuals with as much respect as we can. You know, we don't have to agree with what we're doing, but we don't belittle them or make fun of them, etc., right? We don't accept and say what you're doing is okay, but we shouldn't go out of our way to cause them harm. Do you understand what I'm saying here? But this movie made it look like that this is just a very common thing. And it really created sympathy in the world for homosexuals. Now, in 1993, when this movie came out, it was nothing like it is today. So here's what I'm saying. In my mind, this is one of the starting places for homosexuality and all that's attached to it now to be common and accepted in society. So watch this trend now, right? Okay, so prior to 1990, homosexuality was regarded negatively. However, and this is why I said, however, ridiculing individuals who identify as homosexuals or inflicting harm upon them is equally unacceptable. We don't want to do that. Homosexuality is a real battle, as is other forms of adultery. Just a little side story. I wouldn't tell this on maybe Sabbath morning. I'll just share with you. I was at this guy's house one time, and I didn't know he was a homosexual. He had been married and divorced, and he was acting, I was over there talking with him, and he was acting very uncomfortable. I could see in his face that he was so uncomfortable, and I'm just talking with him, having getting to know him. And later on I left and he sent me an email, I think it was, and he said, sorry, I was acting so funny. I am a homosexual and it was just really messing with me having you in my apartment. Now, that just blew me away. I was totally oblivious to it, right? Had no idea what was going on. But it's a very real issue. And he told me that he has tried so hard to be attracted to women. Now, for most of us guys, that's not a problem at all. But he really battled with that. And so my heart goes out to him. Now, I realize it's wrong and he can be changed by the grace of God if he'll surrender to the Lord. But it is a very real battle. Now, in 2005, I didn't see this movie, but a movie came out called Brokeback Mountain. And I think the guy plays a homosexual in this movie and he gets killed. So once again, there's a movie kind of steered towards homosexuals are persecuted in society. Homosexuals are wrongfully ostracized, okay? Now, in 2013, in Canada, makes a shocking statement and they say it's a hate crime to publicly disagree with homosexuality. You can be thrown in jail for doing that. And that's surprising. So in other words, you can't go out on the public corner and hand out tracts promoting, what we believe biblical marriage. Now in a church setting, they allow it in Canada, but you can't go out and publicly and do it. It's considered a hate crime. That's 2013. Now in 2012, then President Barack Obama comes out and he said that he now supports gay marriage. He said before he was okay with civil unions. Now he says that he is in support of gay marriage. And of course, then in 2015, it was a federal law that was passed that all states must recognize homosexual marriage. So here's my point. You see how fast things changed from 1993 to 2015? They changed so quickly. In 1993, no one could have passed this law. But the devil has sway. He knows how to move people's minds over time, and that's what we were seeing. So then in the 2016 presidential debate, Beto O'Rourke, who was, he's not so famous anymore, but he was a very prominent Democratic leader, he comes out and he says, religious institutions should lose their tax-exempt status if they oppose gay marriage. Now, I was watching the debate live when he said that, and I just leaped out of my chair. I said, I can't believe this guy just said that. Do you know what that would do to places like the Adventist Church that hold on to the position? Okay, so we're going to talk about the right here in the moment, okay, the religious right here in the moment. But, if the devil had his way, he'd take the pendulum that way or that way. And so this Republican-Democrat turmoil, I'm seeing it as maybe a good thing because when Pilate and Herod became friends, that's when Jesus was executed, you see? When the Sadducees and the Pharisees joined together, that's when they persecuted God's people. It was when they were fighting in Corinth and separate that God's people were able to go on a little bit better. So he comes out and says that, which is shocking. And you know that if they had more power, that's exactly where it would be going, okay? And of course, like I said, we would suffer. Our church would suffer immensely. So then, shockingly, in 2016, President Trump, or he wasn't president then, he tells the Republican Party, he said, look, guys, we need to stop focusing in on this homosexual thing, okay? He wasn't saying, but he said, let's not make this an issue anymore. So we go from 1993 to 2016, and things just changed drastically until now, as you know, things are just totally out of control with this. And you see these issues of student gender bathrooms, and you have these jobs. I told some of you I just took this French class, and it was from the University of Wisconsin. And my professors would email me, and at the bottom they'd say, my preferred pronouns are him, her, he. And if you don't call them their preferred pronouns, you can get in big trouble. My own sister, who's a pretty devout Christian in her own right, she's forced to sit down and say, what is your preferred pronoun? And she told me, Eric, this really bothers my conscience to have to do this. And you know that our society has gone from 1993 to now where it just seems like things are out of control. And of course, this issue in the Olympics, or whenever it was, I don't remember, but I think it was the Olympics, where this person who had male DNA got into the ring and beat the tar out of these women. And you saw these women's faces. And first of all, I'm not for boxing, and I don't want to see men fighting. I certainly don't want to see women fighting, so I'm not saying, but it's ridiculous to see a man get in a ring and pummel a lady and then hold their arm up like they're so proud. And you're thinking, what happened to our society? Why are we so crazy now? Well, in 1993, it wasn't like that, but now it is, because the devil has sway. The ground has shifted underneath us so quickly, it's even hard to see our hair span. Now, Liberty Magazine is, of course, the Seventh-day Adventist Religious Liberty Magazine, and recently they had an article that was really good. It was called "Christians Need Not Apply." And in the article, it goes on to talk about how, including Seventh-day Adventist Christians, have been blackballed from organizations because they will not go along with this. Now, let me give you an example. This is the Catholic example, but this made it to the Supreme Court, Fulton versus Philadelphia. A Catholic school services defined home for children was denied by the city of Philadelphia in 2018. The agency served Philadelphia for 200 years. Why were they denied? Because when homosexual couples came to their service, remember, they're Catholic, they believe marriage is between a man and a woman. So when they came to them, the Catholic organization said, I'm sorry, we don't do that here, but here, you can go right down the street and you can adopt a kid from this place. Now, to me, that's reasonable, okay? That's reasonable to think, okay, this is what they believe, but here, they're saying go to this place. Well, of course, people don't want to accept that, and so they they went after them, and the state of Philadelphia banned them and pulled their funding out from underneath them. Well, it went to the Supreme Court, and thankfully, the Supreme Court stood by this and said, look, this is their religious beliefs, we support them. But you just know our society has gotten so out of control with this, okay? So the ground has shifted drastically on this issue. And of course, you know this last presidential debate, the issue was two things. Now, I'm not saying that the issue was two things. You just Google it, you look at the media. The issue really boiled down to two things. One was illegal immigration. The other was the transgender homosexuality thing. That's what really propelled people to the voting booths in this issue, because President Trump, was basically saying, hey, look, we need some common sense on this. Kamala was really pushing, saying that she was going to kind of further that agenda. But you understand what I'm saying? Things really shifted. Okay, so now where am I going with this? That's just to give you a little taste of how fast things can happen. So here's that verse again. We know that we are of God, and the whole world lies under the sway of the wicked one. And what I'm trying to share with you is that even though this liberalism is still so strong in our society, I can feel the ground shifting again, okay, in the other direction. Now, let me just share with you some things that have taken place. Here is our beautiful Bill of Rights. Ryan, do you want to read this one? First Amendment?
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or liberty to free exercise thereof.
Okay, so now notice what it says there. This is so important. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Now, what does that mean? They'll make no law respecting an establishment of religion. That's my dog. Beatrice, take her out and shoot her. No, I'm just kidding. I love dogs, but traveling with dogs this is the last one, but I love this dog to death. Okay, what does it mean? The Congress shall make no longer respecting an establishment of religion. Oh, come on, Seventh-day Adventist, you that quiet, you know what this means. This is our home run passage here. And yes, the government should not promote any religion. Okay? That's what it's saying there. Now, let's go on to some things that have happened in some of these states. Here's Texas. Senate Bill number 10, effective September 1, requires public schools to display donated copies of the Ten Commandments, resulting in widespread lawsuits and ongoing investigations into schools, districts that have not complied. Okay, so they're making it required by law that the Ten Commandments be displayed. Now you're thinking, a Seventh-day Adventist, wouldn't I be happy about that? No, I'm not really happy about that, okay, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think it's a violation of church and state, because you cannot have a government, okay, favoring a certain religion, even if it's my religion. Number two, if you put the Ten Commandments up there, I don't want them on the wall. I want them in people's minds and in their hearts. Number three, the Ten Commandments are a dead letter if they're not accompanied with the cross of Christ. You see what I'm saying? And so putting them up there is opening the door for later on, if the Muslims have control, well, they can put their 5 pillars up there. Or if the homosexuals get control, they can put all their gay flag stuff up there, type of thing. So that's why government should keep that stuff out of there. Okay. Now there's a bill going around here in Indiana as well. Now here's Louisiana. A federal appeals court in February 2026 allowed a law requiring the 10 Commandments in every public classroom to move forward, leading to active efforts to hang posters, often accompanied by a context statement on their historical significance. So there's Louisiana. Now here's the state that I live in, South Carolina. I'll tell you a story with this in just a moment. The State House passed a bill 84-31 in February 2026 requiring the display of 10 Commandments in all public schools and university classrooms. Now, the congressman that was pushing this bill, I got his name, and I just took a long shot and I sent him an email, hoping to correspond. I was so surprised. He emailed me right back. And so me and this congressman who was promoting this bill went back and forth. And I was telling him, look, I am a conservative Christian. I don't like all this woke stuff that's being pushed either. I'm with you on that, but you are entering down a slippery slope, okay? Your job is to make sure that churches have a fair field and well balanced. And God really helped me. I was talking about Roger Williams and the founding of this country. It really went well, except for he continued his bill. But anyways, I got my word in. Now, I shouldn't say I was invited, but there was a religious liberty convention in the state capitol in South Carolina. I live in Columbia, the state capital's there. And they were advertising religious liberty. It's mostly a Mormon thing, but Mormons are actually big on religious liberty, actually, not like Adventists are. And if you talk to Mormons, because it's one of their tenets, religious liberty, befriend Mormons, because Mormons can be our ally here, but they're not quite where we're at. You got to know the establishment clause and explain that to them. Okay, because it's very clear government should not favor religions. So anyways, I went there. This is the lieutenant governor of South Carolina. She spoke. And afterwards, we were able to interact with them. And by the way, religious liberty isn't for everybody. I took this picture right here of this lady. She was sleeping. But that's what happens when you fall asleep around me. But it was very interesting because I had the opportunity to listen to these congressmen share, right? And one of them got up, his name's Bill Taylor, he's a congressman down there, and he was, in my mind, a good guy, holds a lot of the same values as I do, but he was crossing the lines in some of the things he said. And so I walked up to him and I said, Representative Taylor, is placing the 10 Commandments in a school, is it a violation of the Establishment Clause of the Constitution? And then he said, well, I need to think about that. I said, well, think further. If you go down that route, then you need to open the door for other people. Well, it's a historical document. Yeah, put it in the history books. I'm okay if they pass a law sharing that our founding fathers use this in the history books, but not on display, because once you go down that route, like I said, it's a problem. Now, here is the second highest judge, federal judge in the state of South Carolina. And word got to him that I was a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, and he came over to me and he said, we want Seventh-day Adventists to be a part of this. He said, we know you guys are big on religious liberty. We called the organization and they never returned their call. And I said, Your Honor, you better believe next year, I can promise you that we will have a Seventh-day Adventist speaker here for your convention next year. Because my friends, we as Adventists have so much to share on this. And it's a great conversation piece to talk with individuals. Okay, but you see, it's shifting. Things are changing, just like we believe the Great Controversy says. Okay, I'll take comments here in just a moment, but you probably are well aware that the Heritage Foundation, which is a very powerful lobbyist group in Washington, D.C., put out this statement calling for uniform Sunday laws. And here's what it says. It's kind of hard to see if you haven't read it. You've probably seen this already, but here's what it says. Support for a uniform day of rest. As zoning laws allow community to determine where one can operate certain business, blue laws reflect the local judgments as to when one can operate certain businesses. And then it goes on to talk about how they should promote Sunday laws and shut down businesses so that we can get back to family values. Now, is this a huge thing in Washington, D.C.? No. But you can see, just like the homosexual thing, it's building momentum. The ground is shifting below our feet. Now, I realized that President Trump, when he called for the Jewish Americans to observe a national Sabbath, I realized that a large part of what he was doing is, hey, look, we need to kind of stick up for Jewish people. They're being ostracized in society. And I tell you what, I don't, if people are going to do, if people are going to do what they did to the Jews back in like the World War II time, I'm going to stand up for the Jewish people. I do not want to see that happen again. And our society just seems to be going that way. But never in the history of America has a president called for Americans to observe a national Sabbath. They've called for people to observe a national day of prayer, but never a national Sabbath. Isn't that just so interesting? How things are shifting, things are changing. And of course, here's what it says in here. Here's President Trump's proclamation. Once again, this is not a law, it's a proclamation. There's a difference, but the wind, the voice, the conversation is changing a little bit. Throughout this historic year, we rejoice in the triumph of the American spirit and rededicate ourselves to the cause of liberty and justice for all. In special honor of 250 glorious years of American independence and on the weekend of Rededicate 250, a national jubilee of prayer, praise, and thanksgiving, Jewish Americans are encouraged to observe a national Sabbath. From sundown on Monday 15th to nightfall on May 16th, friends, families, and communities of all backgrounds may come together in gratitude for our great nation. This day will recognize the sacred Jewish tradition of setting aside time for rest, reflection, and gratitude to the Almighty. Now, therefore, I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, call on all Americans to celebrate their faith and freedom throughout this year, during this month, and especially on Shabbat to celebrate our 250th year anniversary. That's just interesting to me, okay? I think you all understand what I'm saying. Now, enter into the picture, and I know probably some of you have already, you're up to date on this, but my whole point is how far things came from 1993 to today with the homosexual thing. Even though I'm not saying that Jesus is going to be coming, the Sunday law is coming the next year or two, I do feel like we've kind of entered into the end game type thing. That's what I think is happening. You can see this thing is slowly gaining momentum, and Ellen White is very clear. As the calamities come, as the economy fails, okay, these things contribute to these voices. That's what she says. These voices and pushes for Sunday laws to get louder and louder. Of course, the Pope, he's got this encyclical. Each one of these guys writes these encyclicals. They're meaningless to me, but his upcoming one is called Magnificent Humanity. And what's interesting about this, because I don't know what's going to be it, but he's trying to launch it on the anniversary of Pope Leo XIII, who wrote one. He's named Pope Leo after this last pope who he admired. And that pope that he admired wrote an encyclical called Rerum Novarum, which specifically called for passing Sunday laws. Okay, that's what the large part of what that pope's encyclical was going to do. So on the celebration of that anniversary, this pope wants to say this. It's going to be very interesting what he says in that. Very interesting. I'm very interested to see what he's going to write about. And of course, the 250th year of the American country, and I love this country. It's so amazing. No country has done what this country is and passed along without a king or the freedom of elections for 250 years. And I want you to know that I am a true blue American. I mean, when I walk past an American flag, I am so American that it salutes me. You know what I'm saying? That's how American I am. So I don't want you to think that I'm not. But you see that things are in the work, okay? Now, here's what Thomas Jefferson said. Now let, Susan, would you read it for us? Erica, did we skip you? Okay.
That our civil rights have no dependence on our religious opinions any more than our opinions in physics or...
He spelled it wrong. That's not me. That's his misspelling, not mine. Physics, but he spelled it wrong. Okay, because I'm trying to get a PhD. I don't think I'm that dumb. I know how to spell physics, but you see what he's saying here. I so agree with this. Okay, now what he's saying here is that our civil rights have no dependence on our religious opinions any more than our opinions on physics or geometry. Okay, now of course our values and who we are largely determined by what we believe. I agree with that, but as far as holding people's citizenship, we shouldn't look at their religious beliefs. And that's one of the things that makes America so special. And so you can see that that's happening. Like I said, the ground is shifting very quickly under our feet. So here's what Ellen White says in The Great Controversy. Do you want to read? Oh, my word. We'll go back to Erica. Yeah.
As the controversy extends into new fields and the minds of the people are called to God's downtrodden law, Satan is astir. The power of conveying a message will only madden those who oppose it.
Okay, so in a nutshell, what this is saying is that it's going to grow. It's going to grow slowly and it's going to grow powerfully. And that's kind of where I see the beginnings of that. Because really, 15 years ago, there were some things where you'd quote some sort of Supreme Court justice where he says the wall of separation in church and state is a misnomer. You'd see stuff like that. But now you're seeing real tangible things of the direction that leaders want to go with this. And it's really shocking. So here's, I know Tom calls you a goober. Is that okay? Veronica. I was going to, you guys call her so many different, you call her Ronnie, you call her Veronica. And anyways, go ahead.
Men in responsible positions will not only ignore and despise the Sabbath themselves, but run the sacred debt will urge upon the people the observance of the first day of the week. Leaving tradition and custom in the baptism and agency, they will point to humanity's common ministry, as judgment and
Okay, so you can see that that is in the midst, okay? So I want you to know that my focus is not on prophecy and current events. I don't have an app where I see what the Pope's schedule does and all that kind of stuff. I do keep up on it, but I want you to know that my focus is on getting close to Jesus, right? Now, of course, I watch these things, but I know that if I'm right with him, then when all that stuff comes down, I won't have as much to worry about, even though we are to know these things. But I want you to notice what Jesus said to his followers. And Sheila, would you read it for us?
Luke 21, verse 28, New King James. Now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near.
Okay. Thoughts or comments? Be nice now towards everybody.
Most of these things that occur are emotionally motivated.
Emotionally driven? Yes.
When we stop reacting and begin to think in a more clear and informed manner, then instead of reacting, we will be able to discuss what's going on and have a clearer understanding of which direction to take instead of reacting.
And that's so true. And that's what we kind of see in Bible prophecy is that at the end, people are going to be so emotionally invested into this, it's almost going to be so difficult to even talk to them about it. Yeah, and kind of like it's the parallels between the homosexual thing and this are so like this homosexual, how just emotional people get about it. You can't sit down and have a reasonable conversation with them. It's going to be the exact same thing. Fantasia?
I just learned this week that in the catechism, it says, that people should keep their festivals and their days, like Sunday. That's what their goal is anyway, in the catechism. Like, it's no secret. So, like, the things that the Pope's putting out, it's really nothing alarming in that sense from the Catholic view. But as Americans, as Protestant Americans, that's what we need to spread the word here and say, look, we're not Catholics.
Yeah.
That's not what, you know what I mean?
Right.
Remember, we are Protestant.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. Anybody else want to share something? Yeah, Carl?
I'm not so sure about things moving so slowly. I think things are going to start speeding up.
It could be.
Next year is going to be the 2000th anniversary of Christ's baptism. I'm not saying the end is near or that near necessarily, but I think as time moves on, it's going to get more and more noisy. It's going to get moving a lot faster. Things are going to be stacking up so quickly that if we are not careful, if we don't keep our focus on Christ, and we take our focus off of Christ and on the noise around us, we will be quickly basically taken out of circulation wood price.
Yeah.
If you know what I'm saying. So to the point before, we have to be very careful that we can look at this stuff taking place, but to say that to say anything more than we expect this to happen, we've been waiting for this, um, or not necessarily waiting in as much that we seem to be waiting for the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is waiting on us, is what it almost feels like. So once we get out of that groove, things will start moving for us as well.
Yeah, yeah. And when Ellen White says the last movements will be rapid ones, and like what I'm trying to say here is with the homosexual thing, those of us who lived before all this are living through it now. Has the movements been rapid ones? Oh my word, they've been rapid. And some of you who have a few more years under your belt than I do, I mean, you even look further in the past, and just in the last 15 years, how things have changed. Okay, Greg, you had another comment?
Yeah, the devil loves to put people in pockets, separate them into groups. And he loves it when he can actually separate large groups into two separate groups so that he can blame all the problems on one group. And we're seeing that happening in society now. We can see the polarization taking place. And if you think about it, we as Adventists, by observing the Sabbath, are being connected to the Jews. So all of the issues that are taking place against the Jews will also include Adventists, because we observe the same day
Yeah.
as the Jews. But what will happen as time progresses? Things don't get better, they get worse. Well, then the Muslims are going to be included as those groups that are going to be accused of not complying and therefore need to be dealt with, and etc. So the devil is putting everyone into groups, and then eventually we'll make that group one big group of us and them. We need to be careful.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. I just wanted to, while you're talking, I was just thinking too, is, and I think you probably all know this, is that it's not right away an anti-Sabbath law that's going to be passed. It's a pro-Sunday thing. That's how it starts. And, that's like with this homosexual thing, it just slowly built up. And that's how the whole Sunday thing, it just isn't started like, okay, pro-Sunday, anti-Sabbath. It starts at pro-Sunday and then builds up. And then as Ellen White describes, then the calamities get worse, and then the focal point becomes on one group who's not going along with this over time. Sheila, you had a comment?
Yeah, talking about groupings and one group and a different group. I think it's so important for us to look individual, just our individual, our relationship in one-on-one, and look around us and see if there's distractions. If there's
Yes.
people in our lives, we love them, friends, family, any influences that, are causing that, they don't know they are, they're not deliberately doing it, but are we allowing them to be a distraction in our life and focus on God?
Yes, that's
This
it.
really has been, for me, I've been trying to set boundaries and certain, just setting those boundaries and staying firm with them, anyone or anything that's causing a distraction in my life from the Lord. And make sure we keep our, devotional and our prayer time and our Bible study time and everything, firm, and consistent.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, we got just a couple minutes left, but I want to sing a couple closing songs with you. But yeah, Cassidy, what do you want to share?
I'm a little irritated with, Trump has this Jewish Sabbath, but it's not the Jewish Sabbath.
Yeah,
It's
that's
the
right.
Sabbath of the Lord.
Yes.
That was instituted at creation before sin even entered into the world. And so my prayer is that Adventists can speak out against that, because what he just did was he put a separation between Christianity and the Sabbath.
Yeah.
He made it like the Sabbath is just a Jewish thing.
You're right.
And so now we're separated from Christianity,
Yeah.
which is not true.
That's a good point. You had another point there? Is that it? I thought you were looking down at point number 2. That's good. Yeah, go ahead, Kiata.